Well, let's speak to Mark Kimmit now. He's the former US Assistant Secretary of State for Political Military Affairs, and he joins me live now from Washington, D.C. Mark, good to see you. Just give me your impression of that relationship between the United States and Israel. Very close allies. Ironclad was the phrase that Joe Biden has used. I mean, is there anything Netanyahu can do that America won't back and get behind?
Well, I think that on the surface, very few things. Behind the scenes, it is clear that there's not a good relationship between Prime Minister Netanyahu, and he didn't have a warm relationship with President Clinton either. But I do believe that President Biden may draw red lines on attacking Iranian nuclear facilities or doing targeted assassination against key leaders inside of Iran. He will not prevent that from happening, but the U.S. policy is we will prevent and support the defense of Israel. But when you're talking about long-range offensive operations, I think that that will be a point of discussion between President Biden, Minister of Defense Gallant, Minister of Defense Austin, and Prime Minister Netanyahu. I think that may be going over the U.S. red line, that somehow Prime Minister Netanyahu thinks he can drag the United States into a regional war by supporting an attack on Iran.
Mark, tell me, do you think Benjamin Netanyahu has made a calculation here that we're into the last few weeks of a Biden administration? He perceives the President of the United States to be quite weak politically, and he's, for want of a better phrase, firing all these bullets and bombs while he still can, ahead of November 5th?
Well, first of all, I don't think November 5th is going to change much. Remember, it's really January 21st that President Biden hands over the reins of office. But I really don't see much of a difference between President Biden and Kamala Harris. I think she will carry on the position of President Biden. And I think President Trump, if he returns, will be even more supportive of Israel and may, in fact, not draw any red lines between the United States and Israel when it comes to an attack on Iran.
And Mark, we're 4 weeks away now from the US presidential elections. I mean, how big an issue on the foreign policy front do you think the whole Middle Eastern issue is? Or do you think Americans will just vote and focus on domestic problems?
Well, first of all, it's not 4 weeks away. It's 3.5 weeks away. It's that close. Presidents are not elected or ousted from office because of foreign policy issues unless it's a significant issue, as we saw in 1979 with the Iranian hostage situation, where the Iranians waited for President Reagan to come into office before they released them. But the average voter is more concerned about the economy, about immigration, about women's reproductive rights. And candidly, I think they're worried about character between, and the difference of character between President Trump and Kamala Harris. So having said that, unless there's a major regional war that breaks out that could involve Americans' loss of life, I don't think this is going to have an effect on the presidential election. It won't change any votes.
Mark Kimmit, former US Assistant Secretary of State for Political Military Affairs, live for us there in Washington, D.C. Thank you so much.